Yes, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming tonight and thank you for being in our cozy room. I'm Jenny Martinez.
I'm Susie Green.
And Karen Swissa.
And we're the founders of Three Trees Yoga and part of the faculty of the teacher training programs. We'll mostly be talking about the 200 initially, and then we'll get into the 300-hour, the advanced training. We're going to go over some highlights about the program first, and then we'll open it up to questions. A few of the things that we think really make our program stand out are the faculty. We have 5 people in the 200-hour faculty. And we feel like each one of us has a special expertise. It's impossible for a couple of people to be an expert in everything. And so we feel like we've gathered this tribe of people who are passionate about different topics and also really knowledgeable. And that makes it more interesting for students. And also you get this breadth of knowledge and experience from more faculty, a diverse faculty.
So maybe we should talk a little bit about who the other 2 people are. So there's the 3 of us, and then there's Deval Drew. I don't know if some of you are familiar with him. And he was an ear, nose, and throat surgeon here in Federal Way for 25 years, very well respected. And then he retired and became yoga teacher and Ayurvedic physician. So Ayurveda is the kind of Eastern medicine sister to yoga, and he is amazing, and we are really fortunate to have him as part of our program. He runs and really created the Ayurvedic program at Bastyr, and so we are just so fortunate and so lucky. He knows a tremendous amount, and really what you learn in terms of Ayurveda in this 200-hour is often more than what people receive in their advanced training. We found that out when we did our own advanced trainings, how deep he goes. And so we're really fortunate. I think that's one of the things that makes our program special. And then we have our 5th teacher, who's Rochelle Ricard, and she's our anatomy instructor, and she is the yoga engineer. She's got her own website. She's writing a book. She has an entire system that she is incredibly passionate about and very enthusiastic in her delivery. And I just don't think you can find an anatomy teacher more knowledgeable and about not just anatomy, but how it applies to yoga, because you don't necessarily need to know about anatomy as it applies to other areas of life. We want to know, how does it work in the body, in these particular poses, the ways that we're trying to move, how do we keep people safe and ourselves safe, deliver yoga in a way that's healthy for whoever walks in the door. So that's just a little taste of those that aren't here.
Want to add anything to that?
Well, we can add what we do.
That's true. Go for it, Susie.
I teach pranayama, so the breath work, and we practice one pranayama each month. So we learn one during the course of the weekend, and then we spend that whole month, you'll spend that whole month just practicing and journaling about what that breath practice was like for you. And during the course of the year, the idea is that you're going to become so familiar with these breath practices that you're going to know how they serve you when you're depleted, how they serve you when you're super amped and you need to relax a little bit, how they serve you when you're having trouble sleeping at night. So the idea is that at the end of the year, you're going to have a toolbox of breath practices. And then most of the breath practices that we learn during the year, you'll also be trained on how to teach them. So you'll be practicing teaching them to your fellow students. And so there will be breath practices that you absolutely love, and there will be breath practices that you absolutely hate. And it's all good knowledge, because then you have your go-tos. And then I also teach the chakra theory. And I teach a different type of chakra theory than you may know. It's not the rainbow system that you see on all the books and everywhere. It's the tantric, the original yogi chakra system, which is really founded in our physiology. It's based on the neuroendocrine system. And I always say that it's so weird to hear myself say that I teach the chakra system, and I'm super jazzed about it because I always thought when we first started, when we took our training together. And when I first heard about the chakra system, it didn't have a resonance with me. I just thought it was kind of some woo-woo fluff stuff, and I didn't really connect with it. And then I heard this woman, this yoga teacher, speaking about the tantric system, and all the bells and whistles in my brain started going off, and I just had such an immediate connection with it. And I found myself within 2 weeks of listening to this podcast, booking myself on a flight to Toronto to go take her advanced chakra training. And it really has been life-changing for me because it helped me to see the world in a different way and to understand it a little better, which is always helpful. So the chakra system that I teach is the ancient original system, and it's based on how our technology is designed, sort of what we're here to do, and how different mental fluctuations are indicative of a different chakra imbalance. And so anyway, I talk all night about the chakra system. And then I teach an asana class on Sundays. So the idea is we do, there's lecture and practice on Friday, and you'll do some asana on Friday, and then we do some lecture and some practice on Saturday. And then by Sunday we figure that you're so in your head that just getting back to yoga would be a nice thing, just to do some flow and move your body. So I do that with you on Sunday as we just do a class and kind of let all this stuff marinate. What do you do?
It's a hard act to follow. I am the philosophy and meditation teacher, and actually this coming year we're shifting things a little bit because I used to do some of the asana, and I'm letting Rochelle take that part that I used to teach because that's her thing. So she'll do anatomy and asana, and I'm really focusing on the thing that I'm so passionate about and that I spend all my time doing on my own, which is mindfulness, meditation. And so we study philosophy through the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. You might be familiar with that. And we study the 8 limbs, which I think any yoga teacher training worth its salt should do. We chant a little bit, we chew on it, we talk about it. And what I find really joyful about that is that through that process, these sutras that are thousands of years old have come alive and inform how we live our life now. And I think the discussions are really rich, and I love them. And in the 8 limbs, you could argue half of them have to do with meditation. And in the way that we've done the program before, meditation kind of comes at the end, and now we'll be introducing it earlier. And so we have a chance to really get familiar with meditation practices and the workings of our own mind. And I love it. And I think that's one of the things about our program is that the things that we teach, we think are just so fascinating. We just really breathe them and think they're wonderful. And I think you guys benefit from that. There's no part of it that is just sort of dry to the one that's teaching it anyway. I don't know what you guys think. And I would say this too before we completely overwhelm you, because Jenny was doing too, is a lot of this stuff, some of it, you need to know to graduate, and some of it is just for your own personal edification. So you take from it what speaks to you and what works for you, and you can let the rest go. So for some people, they're not that into the philosophy, and that's okay. And for other people, they're not that into the Ayurveda, and that's okay. You don't have to be an expert in all of it. Sort of see the things that feed your life, and you dive into it as deeply as feels right to you. And so we heard a graduate say to someone who was thinking about taking our training, it's a difference between stepping in a puddle and swimming in the ocean, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true. It can really be a transformative year if you decide that's kind of how you want to approach it.
Mm-hmm. So I teach a variety of things, kind of fill in maybe. Rochelle and I teach the asana, and the way that we teach the asana is designed to break apart what you know of asana and then put it back together so that you can think like a teacher when you're faced with a group of students with all different bodies and all different needs. You can design the practice that will best suit them, that will best serve them, and you'll know how to think about that. You're not just fed cues that you are going to memorize. You actually learn how to look at bodies and modify postures and be adaptable for your classes, because every class, even if you call it a beginner class, every class is going to be a mixed level class. There are going to be people that need more help and other people that have more experience. And so we want to teach you how to think on your feet and to really be a teacher, not just follow the leader type of teacher. So I teach asana. I love mantra, which is the chanting, and so you'll learn some chants. Not everybody loves it, but sometimes people start off thinking, no, it's not for me, and then they end up loving it. So you just give it a chance, just like everything else in the program. You can take it or leave it. Maybe you dive in deep to it. Maybe you focus more on something else. I teach sequencing, which is kind of like when you're cooking and you get to be creative in the kitchen or you get to create a new recipe. That's how I think of the sequencing for a yoga class. It's the difference between having a okay yoga class and a really exciting class that's themed, that's different, that's more unique, that brings people back, you know, and it's well-rounded. One of the differences, I think, in our program is that we're teaching you this very complex system, not just yoga asana, not just the postures, but the depth of yoga. That's what we find exciting. Some people have called training like yoga light, where you just learn yoga postures, and ours is the depth with the philosophy, the meditation, the chakras, the Ayurveda, the mantra. It's so rich. And then from that foundation, you can step off into any direction that really calls to you, which is something that excites us because we've graduated almost 150 students now in the last 6 years, and each one of them are doing something different. You know, we don't turn out cookie cutter teachers. We give you this foundation so that you can then apply it to, you know, some people teach kids, some people teach seniors, some people teach prenatal. Aerial yoga. We have people teaching in our corporate yoga company. So it's exciting because you can look around even this info session and see how diverse our groups are, and that's what we love. We really want to embrace all of our differences and then come together and get excited because you get to spend a weekend being yoga geeks. You know, that doesn't work in the rest of our lives usually. I know my husband gets tired of hearing about yoga. So,
just to add on to that too,
yeah.
Jen, we've had people who sometimes you come because you know you want to be a teacher and that's your plan, and that wasn't my plan when I did teacher training. I couldn't imagine how that was ever going to be a reality in my life. I had a job, I had a mortgage, I had kids. And so we just encourage you, if you don't know what this is going to be for you, if you just know that you love yoga and you want to just chew on it with other people who love yoga once a month for 10 months, that's enough. You don't have to know how am I going to get from A to B, or where is this going to take me in my life, because I sure didn't know, and we did training together and ended up opening the yoga studio. Well, we hardly knew that was going to happen, and even that wasn't a straight line, you know, it kind of wandered and meandered, and I think as long as you just kind of lean into the things that you love, then it kind of develops the way that it's supposed to.
Could you also speak to, every time we do this, you talk so beautifully about being in the circle and thinking, or being at the first training, like...
Yeah, you're thinking of the word fraud.
Yes.
Again.
I want to say fraud.
I know, I can see you hesitating, like, I don't want to call you a fraud. So I felt so intimidated by the whole process, and when I went to the first circle, like I signed up for the training because Jen was like, "Come do it." I'm like, "Come in and do it." And I was like, I don't belong. I don't know enough. I'm not good enough. I'm just gonna try to fly under the radar and hope nobody notices that I'm not good enough. And everybody, well, not everybody, but most people feel that way that we talk to in our first circles, this sense of I'm not fit enough, or I'm not strong enough, or I don't know Sanskrit, or whatever the fear is inside. If you have that voice, then you're just normal, like the rest of us. And it can be there, but it doesn't get to be in charge. That's what we would encourage you. The other voice that got you to come tonight, that other voice that when you drive by and you think, I want to do that, I'm going to do teacher training one day, listen to that one. You know, because that's the one that's a little quieter maybe, but maybe a little wiser too.
Yeah, just step towards that mystery. You don't have to know the final story. I felt the same way. I had no intention of teaching yoga. I didn't think it was a real job. And then it's turned into my life. So I'm grateful for my first teacher asking me to do teacher training, or encouraging me, or inspiring me. It really, has defined my life, but certainly was not what I had expected. So, do we feel like we've got the faculty covered?
No, well, yes, but I have one more thing that I was thinking about when you were talking, which is some people who sign up for this, it just becomes like part of what they already do. So they're not maybe a yoga teacher in a traditional sense, but we've had acupuncturists and naturopaths and massage therapy,
Dentists,
therapy, different kinds of counselors,
psychotherapists.
Can't think of them all
so
now,
can
but lots
teachers.
of professions, teachers.
So you can weave it into, doctors. You can weave it into what you're already doing. Parents, elementary school teachers that incorporate it into their classroom. So there's so many avenues. This practice is growing. When I first started teaching yoga, it was really only for 20-something very fit people in this country anyway. And now anybody, really from 3 to 85, is a possible yoga student. And so many different places are interested in having yoga teachers. So it's not just traditional, like you have to teach in a fitness facility, or you have to teach in a yoga studio. Schools, churches, hospitals, every place is a potential. Susie even set up some classes at, what do they do at Strike Brothers?
Oh, well, we started with mindfulness, and now they do
But
a
what's
regular
the
yoga
company?
class.
What do they do?
Oh, they're machinists.
Machinists. Yeah, machinists doing mindfulness. Isn't that fantastic? The world is a better place because of that. So, facilities. We have this amazing studio, and we have a much bigger, even more amazing yoga practice studio in the rest of the building. We have Healing Arts Center practitioners here that are great support for you. So while you're going through the training, if you also want to do an Ayurvedic treatment with Deval, get more personal attention. If you want to have a massage, get Thai yoga massage or esthetician. We have lots of different ways to support you right here in our community. So we'll meet here on Friday nights, and then Saturday and Sunday is at Good Karma Center for Joy. It's
Which is a beautiful
studio.
space.
Yeah, and they have more
It's our second
bathrooms,
home.
which is always good for classes with lots of women. The 300-hour takes place all at Good Karma because we can't interrupt our Friday night schedule on the first weekend of the month. So we feel really blessed to have these two homes. This is ours, and Kathy Price owns Good Karma, but she has been an amazing support to us and has allowed us to use her space for the last 6 years. And hopefully
She did our training this
she
past year.
just graduated from our training last year, so we're excited to have her be part of that.
So for the 200, Friday night is here, and Saturday and Sunday are at Good Karma.
Then our curriculum. So this is how our curriculum was designed. We went through training years ago, and then we taught for about, we opened the studio, and the studio was open for about 6 years before we decided to launch teacher training program. And we really did it initially because it was really hard to find yoga teachers who were certified yoga teachers in the South Sound. They all lived in Seattle and nobody wanted to drive here. So we thought, well, we better just train some, so let's just stay here. And we actually went away to a hotel for a weekend and sequestered ourselves, because we're all moms, we have lots of distractions at home, and we knew we couldn't concentrate if we were at home. And so we just spent 3 days hashing out what were the important things. We knew what Yoga Alliance required, and then we also knew from our own trainings what we really resonated with, what we thought was really super important and helpful, and what had helped guide us to that point, and what we thought we should let go of, what we thought we should change. And so this is a result of that first weekend. And then every year, our graduates have fed us even more feedback and more ideas how we can keep improving. So I have to think that, I mean, we were fantastic when we started, but we've got to be really good now, because we've had all of these 150 graduates that have helped us along the way and said, you know, this really, really is great, and maybe we can tweak this.
And when we went away for that weekend, what we all remembered was how it's a long weekend. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of thinking and a lot of doing. And so one of the things we really try to do is layer the learning. So that, for instance, the first weekend, we're doing the root chakra. We're also doing pelvic floor and Mula Bandha. And so we really try to incorporate in that weekend a theme, because we find that people tend to learn better that way if we can just kind of condense in on a theme. And then we also remembered how, like, I remember my back never hurt so much as leaving teacher training. And I thought, something's wrong with this picture. I'm walking out of teacher training like I'm 85. And so one of the things that we were really conscious of is giving you a lecture and then giving you movement, and then giving you lecture and then giving you movement, and then giving you a nice long yoga nidra or guided meditation so that you can just kind of rejuvenate, and not a lot of movement right after lunch, these little details. We really tried to think through all of the little details.
I remember thinking, I just want a really good shavasana. Is that too much to ask from yoga teacher training? I don't think we ever got a really good shavasana in our training, but anyway, now we offer that. You're welcome. The schedule is really designed because of the way that we learn best. We like to have, an intense weekend, and we're not saying that it's an easy weekend. It's a lot of information to take in, but then you have a whole month to practice, to chew on it, to contemplate it, to work with it, because that's how we learn best. We do not learn with the fire hose method, where you just take in all the information and then try to regurgitate it. So we feel like if you want to teach, or if you even just want to deepen your practice, this is the way to do it. It's over time. It's not a fast fix. It's not a 200 hours in 2 weeks. That might work for some people, but it doesn't work that way for our brains. And so that's why we've created the program to be over 10 months. And it's actually 9 weekends that we're together, but we take August off because most people in the Northwest leave town. And that gives you an extra month to catch up on your homework if you got really busy along the way. So it's nice to take those 10 months and not rush through it.
And then we finish with a nice retreat. Were you going to talk about Harmony Hill?
No, you talk about it.
So we go away for a retreat to Harmony Hill, which is out in Union, Washington, on the canal. This beautiful space with delicious food. And that's where we do graduation. So we spend the weekend out there, and you do classes, and we have fun, and then we do a graduation ceremony on the Sunday. And that's November weekend.
Yeah, and by that time you've all spent all this time together, and it's bittersweet because you don't want to leave us either. You don't want to leave each other.
It's like the best
right?
slumber party.
It's a great way to celebrate, and it's not a relaxation retreat. It is a working retreat. You're still learning that weekend, but you're also having fun. And and you're celebrating this accomplishment that you've been together and you've put in all this work and you've stepped up, you know? It is really a big accomplishment to do this, regardless of whether you use it to teach yoga or just to deepen your practice. It's important.
I was going to touch on the homework and that, the month in between the weekends that we're together, because we get questions about that. Well, what if I work full time? What if I'm in school? What if I also have things going on at home? And so we give these homework suggestions, and sometimes a month is great and you manage to do things and you come back and you're like, yeah, I did all my homework, but there are months where you don't. Life happens. It's a long time that we're together. And the assignments are really there to support you. We, again, sit down, sequester ourselves, think what readings would support the things that they learned, because there is so much that you receive. What ways of practicing would be helpful? I was talking to somebody today who said, I see that I'm required to come to 3 trees twice a week the whole time I'm in training. No, you're not. You're not. You're encouraged to come to a weekly class once or twice a week if you can. It doesn't have to be with us. If you come to one of our 3 classes, it's free. If you go to one of our other teachers, it's not. So there is that, and we do encourage you to keep coming to class, but for lots of people, that's just not possible.
So the one other thing that I want to touch on before we open it up to questions is the fact that we are unique in that we not only have a studio and a yoga teacher training program, but we have a corporate yoga company called Workwell Northwest. We launched it in 2014, and Susie pretty much works full-time in just cultivating new jobs for our graduates. So if it is something that you want to do, eventually, it's not a guarantee of work, but you know that we're constantly looking and trying to create these possibilities for people to work in the corporate environment. And I don't know of any other yoga teacher training programs that are working as hard to create jobs as they are to create teachers. So I think that sets us apart. And it's also very exciting that we can take that practice into environments that there might be people that would never come into a studio, that would never try yoga. The machinists probably never would go, to take a mindfulness yoga class in the studio, but here they are getting mindfulness. So that's really cool. So why don't we open it up? Do you feel like I think we covered it. We covered it, but
We'll talk forever.
I'm sure. And then I want to have a few minutes to talk about the 300 as well. So while we're on the subject of the 200, maybe you can ask us any questions that we didn't cover. Oh, we did a great job. Okay.
So if you know that you already have a commitment for one of the weekends and you can't make it, like I have a cruise booked in October, is there a way to make that up beforehand or afterward or during
I'm glad you asked that question. We should have
August.
covered that one. Yes. Life happens. Things that are pre-planned or you get sick. Obviously, the ideal world, you would take all the classes, you wouldn't miss anything, and that would be fine. But if you have to miss a weekend, there are ways to make it up. The lectures, you would have somebody else in your class record the lectures, and then you would write a 1-page synopsis of what you heard, and you turn it into your mentor and get credit for the lecture. The asana classes, the yoga, the movement classes, you would do a 1-hour private for every 2 hours of asana. So that usually you end up having to do about 3 private lessons if you've missed a whole weekend. And the private rates are $75 an hour for 1 hour. Now, if somebody else happens to miss that same weekend, then you can split it and it makes it a little less. If you wanted to wait until that same weekend the following year, you can take it for free, but that does hold up your graduation. So those are the ways that you make it up. The practice teaching time, you would just get with some of the people in the class and go over what you practiced. So not everything has to be made up one-on-one with the instructor. What other questions?
You mentioned homework and
Yes.
reading, and also the additional 2 classes per week to come. Outside of, or I guess including that, what kind of expectations should we have for time that it will take outside of the weekend as well during the week for
Well,
work?
we encourage you to do a home practice, and that could be 15 minutes a day, maybe it's, 20 minutes a day, or maybe it's an hour, and it's really up to you. The more you do, the deeper it's going to be for you. The reading is very, it's easy and it's fun because you love yoga, so you don't really feel like you're having to work. The anatomy, if you are in the sciences already, will be super easy for you. If you're not, you'll probably be in the majority of the class. It'll be a little bit harder, but people in the past have gotten together and done little study groups, which makes it easier. They've made flashcards. So
Rochelle
it's-
gives a
yeah.
handout. It's maybe 4 pages, so the anatomy is very specific. And then she usually has like a little quiz of things that she wants you to really remember from the weekend.
It's, you have to think long and hard about whether this is the right year for you too. If it's not the right year, then you apply for next year. Right? Any other questions about the 200?
Is there an application fee? Sorry, I'm just not seeing that.
It's a registration fee. It's not really application fee, but it's a deposit. It's $250. If we determine from your application that it's not a good fit program for you, then we would refund the $250.
Okay.
But otherwise, it gets applied to your total. And if you're accepted and you want to pay in full before January 20th, then you get a discount. Our 300-hour is what we offer after the 200-hour. And you would have to be a graduate of either our 200-hour or some other 200-hour. It doesn't have to be from our 200-hour. And we really recommend that you've done a 200-hour and you've taught for a little while, because you get more out of it. I mean, it's not absolutely necessary, but it gives you, the 300-hour really is going deeper, and it's working more subtly, and it's working with different populations of people that you wouldn't necessarily be working with right off the bat. So having some experience of teaching is a great idea before you launch into the next 300-hour. When you graduate from the 300-hour, then you get your 500-hour certification. So that's the more advanced. The faculty is similar to what we have. So the base faculty is the same, but then we also have, in the upcoming training, we have 2 anatomy teachers, Renee Sinelli and Sandy Cook. And we also have Dylan Nobles, who teaches here, who teaches advanced asana. So Dylan is this amazing teacher who has the ability to take a very advanced pose and break it down into little bits, so that even if you thought there was no way you could ever do it, all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm almost there. And he does it so calm and so cool that everybody feels like it's successful. So he's also part of the faculty. And then Patty Wolfram, who's an acupuncturist and energy worker and what other yoga teacher, and she has so many hats she wears, also amazing. Yeah. And then in the 300 we offer 9 faculty modules, which is with the faculty I just talked to you about, and then 9 guest modules where we bring in other teachers who teach their specialty. We use Meredith Holcomb, who teaches intuitive adjustments. We have 2 modules on
Trauma sensitive
yoga. That's what
Morgan
I was traumatized there for a moment. Trauma sensitive yoga with Morgan Vanderpool and Janice Sakori. So different ways of specializing. We have one module that's all about the yoga of photography. So, yoga or photography sessions and marketing and everything you need to know to promote yourself, the business of yoga, with Danielle Sack. So it's exciting because you still get this sense of being part of a community like you do in the 200, but you also get input from other teachers outside of our community. So it kind of accomplishes what, in our advanced trainings that we took, one of the big misses was that you never felt like you were part of a community. We always felt like we were taking modules or we were doing something, but I didn't know anybody else in the room. It always felt like I was on my own. And I really miss that sense of camaraderie that you create in a 200-hour. So when we designed this program, we said, that's important. We want to have that feeling that you're with a group, that you're going through this, because it's long. It's 300 hours. It takes almost 2 years to get through that training. You want to have your people. You want to have your tribe. You want to, and you're already usually teaching or, at least really incorporating yoga into your life. And so it's so nice to have those other people in your life that you can talk to and compare notes and share resources.
We also pull in terms of our visiting teachers, there's the anatomy teacher right there. In terms of pulling in some of our visiting teachers, one of the purposes is to expose you to a bunch of different stuff, so everybody's going to find a different path, like me and the chakras, which I never would have thought in a million years. But everybody that's gone through the training, they kind of find their way. Some people get really into Ayurveda. We have, as Jen said, Meredith, who does intuitive adjustment, hands-on adjustment. And then we have trauma sensitive that's really more about hands-off. It's really more about honoring where people are at who had experienced some kind of trauma. And so they're vastly different teaching styles, but it's one way that people find their path, find their passion or their dharma, is to have this exposure to a bunch of different avenues. And with the 300, we have time to explore a lot of different things.
Yeah. So what questions do you have, Amy?
Is it the same setup where I would sign up and make the deposit? Like, would that be something
Yes.
I could do now? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, although the faculty modules aren't starting till October, you could jump in and start doing the guest modules up until then.
Oh,
So you
that's
can get a
right.
head start,
Nice.
which was different than when we first launched it in October 2016. But this one, we have some really exciting modules coming up. We have a Bhakti Yoga retreat. We have the anatomy modules with Rochelle Ricard in February and April. What else is coming up? Koberry, yeah. And
So Koberry's the person that I went to Toronto to take the advanced training with, and then Karen and I did our 500 hour with Koberry, so she's coming out to do a module.
And then we have a Mukti, who is a Thai yoga massage therapist. He's coming out in, is that September? My head's spinning. And that's a way of taking your yoga and applying another tool. So it's not going to turn you into a Thai yoga massage therapist in one weekend, but it'll give you tools that you can incorporate if you're working with privates. So if you go on our website and look at the 300-hour page, a lot of the modules will be listed there. So anything that's a guest module, you can jump in on early. And then the faculty modules would start over in October of this year. And then there's an application there too.
And the schedule's on there as well.
Is the new schedule on there yet? The schedule should be in the
In here,
catalog.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my
Good
job. I have to update those. Get right on that.
I know I'm a little early, so.
No, we're excited.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I'm
great.
excited.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, it's nice to have you here early. I'm a planner.
She's a total planner. So just so you all know, you will be getting emails from Jen with schedules and all the details of this is where you park and this is where, she's, thank God. I'm not a detail person. She takes care of all of that.
So the 300-hour that I went through, they thought up their next modules like a couple months in advance. That made me crazy. Like, I'm scheduling out to 2020 right now. So I'm not the fly by the seat of my pants girl.
You know what else I would say about something we really sat with and tried to figure out? There's a little bit of flexibility in modules, the guest modules, and skipping a couple, and when you graduate, so you have some flexibility around it. But we also discovered how hard it was in our own trainings to get like an advanced training, and then they never talk about it again. So some teacher would come and teach something, and you'd be like, wow, that's cool, and then we never discuss it, never go back to it. And so we really try to again, layer the learning so that it's not something you get one weekend and then you never hear it again. A lot of the modules, there's the first weekend, there's a faculty weekend in between where we try to set aside an hour or two to practice or revisit what was it we just learned a month ago. And then that guest comes back the following month and you dive in again. And so not all the modules are like that, but several of them are like that, so that hopefully by the time you're done with all of that, it's really integrated. And you haven't just had something dumped on you that never gets visited again. I had a variety of different people, and just to warn you, usually somebody gets pregnant.
Somebody has to.
It doesn't happen during the weekend.
It's warm in here.
So what happened to those people? Can they make it up later?
No, they stay.
Oh, they stay.
Yeah.
Which is great so this is where we really, the volunteer is such a giver, because then the rest of the class learns how does a pregnant woman modify, during a practice.
Or somebody gets injured, or somebody needs surgery, or you still come.
Yeah.
People have had back surgery, or something has gone wrong with their ankle, or we've had people with
Rheumatoid
arthritis, all varieties of
That's real
different
life,
challenges.
and that's who you get in your yoga classes,
We've had a 68-year-old woman in the same class as an 18-year-old. So it's all different varieties of experience in fitness, and it's okay,
And we've had 4 men.
We've had 4 total.
I know what I'm Daniel.
Jeff,
I did one of their classes.
Does everybody pass? Does everybody
that's great.
succeed? Yeah. Do you have criteria for passing? Like, do you have to do a demo or something?
Yes, we don't like to talk about it in the info session.
Oh,
But there's an anatomy test. Don't get scared. Everything works out. Don't worry about that. And there is a demo that you do to practice your teaching. Philosophy test is super easy, right?
Do you have to do headstands?
No, there's no physical thing that you have to be able to do. You have to be able to teach the basics of yoga. We really teach foundational poses. We care more about that because if you get the foundational stuff down, you can teach the fancy stuff. You can teach the flow stuff. And so there's a focus on that. And like Jen was alluding to, and I really think this is important, we don't spoon feed you how you're going to teach your class. This is what you do first and this is what you do second. This is how you cue this pose. Because what we really believe is that not every body is going to be comfortable in that pose with those cues. And so it's harder on you because when you graduate, you don't have maybe the confidence to be like, it's this and then it's this and then it's that. We ask more of you than that. We say, here's a lot of information. Hopefully we feel it's a really thorough, grounded information, and there's no cookie cutter anything. You create your own sequencing. We give you lots of written out cues, but please don't memorize them. They're there as a guide only, and it's really you that comes through.
Yeah, and lots of practice time. Practice with
Practice
each other, practice with your friends, your partners, even your kids. And people who have been in our program have actually created jobs that ended up turning into a job because they started practicing with their coworkers, and then their coworkers were like, oh, you graduated, we still want to take yoga. Okay, well now it's a real job, right? Or one gal created yoga for cyclists, and she taught it at a cycling shop where her son worked, and they wanted to keep going with it. So it's really fun how these things happen. It starts off with just for fun and just for practice, and then it becomes something if you want it to. A lot of our 200-hour people have taught at the Y, because the Y, the way that their fee structures are, they're willing to work with our teachers who are in training without having a graduation certificate yet. So you get to practice in front of real students along the way. And that's worked out really nicely. And then some of them have gotten hired after they've graduated to, actually get paid for teaching there.
And some people choose to get a participation rather than a certification. Whatever happens in their life, or they really don't ever want to teach and they don't want to do the demo. And that's fine too. You don't have to get a certification. It's exactly 7:30.
Yes. We like to be on time. So thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy schedules.